What happens when America's sweetheart completely loses it on live television? In just 43 seconds, you'll witness the moment Julia Roberts went from Hollywood royalty to public enemy number one on The View. This isn't just drama. This is a total meltdown that nobody saw coming. Before we get into this absolute chaos, make sure you subscribe to this channel right now. We bring you daily videos exposing Hollywood's darkest scandals, the confrontations they don't want you to see, and the moments that celebrities wish they could erase from history. Hit that subscribe button because you're not going to want to miss what happens next. Last night on The View, what was supposed to be a simple conversation about Julia Roberts' new project turned into an all-out war that had the entire studio audience gasping in shock. The tension started building the second Julia walked onto that stage, and you could feel something was off from the very beginning. The introduction seemed normal enough. Whoopi welcomed Julia to the show. The audience clapped and cheered like they always do for big stars. Julia waved, flashed that famous smile, and took her seat at the table. She was wearing an elegant black blazer and looked every bit the Hollywood icon that she is. The other hosts, Sarah Haynes, Sunny Hostin, Alyssa Farah Griffin, and Joy Behar, all greeted her warmly. "It's so great to have you here," Whoopi said, smiling wide. "We've been wanting to get you on the show for a while now." "Thank you for having me," Julia responded, crossing her legs and settling into her chair. "I'm excited to be here and talk about the work we've been doing." Joy Behar opened with what seemed like a friendly question about Julia's recent charity work in education reform. "So Julia, tell us about this new foundation you've started. Education reform is obviously a huge issue right now." Julia smiled, adjusted herself in her seat, and started talking about the importance of giving back to communities. "Absolutely, Joy. I've been passionate about education for a long time, and I finally decided to take that passion and turn it into something concrete. We're working with underfunded schools across the country, providing resources, training teachers, and really trying to make a lasting impact on these kids' lives." "That sounds wonderful," Sunny chimed in, nodding approvingly. "What inspired you to focus specifically on education?" Julia's face lit up as she started to answer. "Well, I think education is the foundation of everything. If we don't invest in our children's future, we're failing as a society. I've visited so many schools where teachers are buying supplies with their own money, where kids don't have access to books or computers, and it just broke my heart. I knew I had to do something. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed fine. But then Joy did what Joy does best. She pushed." "So Julia," Joy said, leaning back in her chair with that signature smirk, "you've been very vocal about education lately. But some people are saying that celebrities like you are just using these causes to clean up your image after years of staying silent on important issues. What do you say to that?" The smile on Julia's face didn't exactly disappear, but it changed. It went from warm to cold in about half a second. You could see her jaw tighten just a little bit. The air in the studio shifted. Sarah shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Alyssa's eyes widened slightly. "I'm sorry, Joy," Julia replied, her voice super calm, but with an edge to it that everyone could hear. "Are you actually asking me a question? Or are you just repeating what people on Twitter say about me?" The audience went quiet. You could hear a pin drop in that studio. Sarah Haynes and Alyssa Farah Griffin exchanged quick glances. Even Whoopi Goldberg looked uncomfortable, her eyebrows raising slightly. But Joy wasn't backing down. "I'm asking you a legitimate question," Joy responded, not missing a beat. "It's something a lot of people are wondering about." Julia took a breath, clearly trying to maintain her composure. "Joy, I understand that people are skeptical. We live in a cynical world. But I can assure you that my commitment to education isn't some publicity stunt. This is real work with real impact." "But where was this commitment 5 years ago?" Joy pressed, her voice getting sharper. 10 years ago? You've been famous for over 3 decades, Julia. Why now?" Julia's hands gripped the armrests of her chair, her knuckles turning slightly white. "You know what, Joy? That's actually insulting. People grow. People evolve. Just because someone doesn't broadcast every charitable act they do, doesn't mean they haven't been doing anything. But that's just it, Joy interrupted. And you could tell she was gearing up for something. We've looked into your history. Your charitable foundation, this big education initiative you're talking about, it didn't even exist until 2 years ago. So forgive me for being skeptical when you sit here and act like you've been some education warrior all along. The camera zoomed in on Julia's face, and you could see the anger starting to bubble up. Her cheeks were getting flushed. Her breathing was getting faster. Are you seriously fact-checking me right now on live television? I'm a journalist, Julia, Joy said, spreading her hands out like she was being completely reasonable. It's literally my job to ask tough questions. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be here talking about serious issues. Whoopi tried to jump in, sensing things were going south fast. Maybe we can talk about the specific programs that are being implemented right now. No, Whoopi, let her answer. Joy cut her off. I want to hear Julia explain why we should believe that this isn't just another celebrity vanity project. Julia's voice got louder, and you could hear the anger rising with every word. A vanity project? Are you kidding me right now? Do you have any idea how much time, money, and effort I've put into this? Do you know how many meetings I've sat through? How many schools I've visited? How many teachers I've talked to? I'm sure you've been very busy, Joy said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. But let's be real here. You're a movie star. You live in a mansion. You probably flew here on a private jet. And now you want us to believe that you really understand what it's like for struggling families and underfunded schools? Sarah tried to interject. Joy, I think that's a little unfair. Is it though? Joy turned to Sarah. Is it unfair to point out the obvious disconnect here? Julia leaned forward, her eyes locked on Joy. You want to talk about disconnect? Let's talk about how you sit here every single day in your comfortable chair, making millions of dollars, and you judge everyone who comes on this show. You act like you're some champion of the people, but you're just as privileged as anyone else at this table. The audience gasped. This was not the Julia Roberts they were used to seeing. This was someone who had been pushed too far and was pushing back hard. Joy's face hardened. Excuse me? I've worked my entire life to get where I am. I didn't have things handed to me because of a pretty smile and some romantic comedies. Oh, wow. Julia laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. So now, we're attacking my career? Is that where this is going? Because I'm an actress, my opinions don't matter? Because I've been successful, I can't care about important issues? That's not what I said, Joy shot back. That's exactly what you said. Julia's voice was rising now, and she wasn't trying to hide her anger anymore. You just diminished my entire career to a pretty smile and romantic comedies. Do you know how hard I've worked? Do you know how many hours I've put in? How many roles I've fought for? How many barriers I've had to break through? Sunny tried to calm things down. Ladies, I think we're getting off track here. No, we're not off track, Julia interrupted, her eyes still on Joy. We're exactly on track. This is what Joy does. She invites people on the show, pretends to have a normal conversation, and then ambushes them with gotcha questions and personal attacks. I should have known better than to come here. Joy stood up from her chair, her face red now too. Personal attacks? You want to talk about personal attacks? You just accused me of not caring about people, of being a phony. You don't get to play victim here, Julia. Julia stood up too. Now both of them were standing, facing each other across that table like they were about to have a full-blown fight. The energy in the room was electric. Cameras were zooming in and out, trying to capture every moment of this insane confrontation. I'm not playing victim, Julia said, her voice shaking with rage. I'm calling out your bullshit, Joy. That's what I'm doing. You don't care about education reform. You don't care about helping kids. You care about creating drama and getting ratings. That's all this is. How dare you, Joy hissed, pointing her finger across the table. How dare you question my integrity? I've been fighting for important causes since before you were famous. I've used this platform to shed light on issues that matter. What have you done besides make people cry in movie theaters? The audience was going wild now. Some people were clapping. Some were booing. Nobody knew what to do. This was unprecedented television. Alyssa Farah Griffin looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. Sarah had her hand over her mouth. Sunny was frozen in place. Whoopi was trying to signal to the producers to cut to commercial, but nobody was listening. This was too good. This was television gold, and they weren't about to interrupt it. "What have I done?" Julia's voice was loud now. Loud enough that you knew people outside the studio could probably hear her. "I've donated millions of dollars, Joy. Millions. Not thousands. Not hundreds of thousands. Millions. I've personally funded scholarship programs for over 500 students. I've built libraries in 12 communities that had nothing. I've spent countless hours, days, weeks, working with educators, with administrators, with teachers who are on the front lines every single day to develop programs that actually work, programs that are making a real difference in real kids' lives." "Oh, here we go," Joy said, throwing her hands up in the air dramatically. "Let's talk about how much money you've donated. Let's all sit here and listen to Julia Roberts tell us how generous and wonderful and selfless she is. Do you want a medal? Do you want us all to bow down and thank you for your service? Is that what you need to feed your ego?" "My ego?" Julia looked like she'd been slapped. "This has nothing to do with ego, Joy. Nothing. I didn't come here to brag about what I've done. You're the one who challenged me. You're the one who questioned my commitment. So yeah, I'm defending myself. I'm telling you exactly what I've done because you're sitting there acting like I haven't done anything." Whoopi tried again to regain control. "Ladies, please, we need to..." But Joy wasn't having it. "No, Whoopi. Let her finish. Let Julia tell us all about her charity work. I'm sure it's very impressive. I'm sure she's very proud of herself." The sarcasm was dripping from every word, and you could see it hitting Julia like physical blows. Her face was getting redder. Her breathing was getting faster. She looked like she was about to explode. "You're unbelievable," Julia said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You're absolutely unbelievable. Do you know what it's like to actually care about something beyond yourself? To want to make a difference without expecting applause? I don't do this work for recognition, Joy. I do it because it matters. Because those kids matter. Because education matters. But you wouldn't understand that, would you?" "Excuse me?" Joy's voice went up several notches. "What exactly are you trying to say?" "I'm saying," Julia leaned forward, her hands flat on the table, "that you've become so cynical, so jaded, so focused on tearing people down that you can't recognize genuine passion when it's sitting right in front of you. Everything has to be an angle with you. Everything has to be fake. Nobody can just care about something. Nobody can just want to help. It all has to be about publicity or image or some hidden agenda." Sarah tried to intervene, her voice shaky. "Maybe we should all just take a step back and..." "No!" Both Julia and Joy said it at the same time, their voices overlapping. Joy continued, her face now a deep shade of red. "Don't you dare psychoanalyze me. You don't know me. You don't know anything about what I believe or what I care about. You come on the show as a guest, and you have the audacity to attack me, to question my integrity, to act like you're somehow morally superior because you wrote some checks. I didn't just write checks." Julia's voice cracked with emotion. "I've been in the trenches, Joy. I've sat with kids who can't read. I've talked to teachers who are working 2 jobs just to survive. I've seen firsthand what poverty does to education, what lack of resources does to these communities. This isn't abstract to me. This isn't theoretical. This is real life. Real people, real problems that need real solutions." "And what?" Joy shot back, standing up from her chair now. "You think you're going to solve those problems? You think Julia Roberts is going to swoop in and save education in America? That's incredibly naive. That's incredibly arrogant." Julia stood up too, matching Joy's stance. The 2 women were now facing each other across the table, and the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The camera operators were having a field day, zooming in on both faces, capturing every emotion, every twitch, every sign of rage. I never said I was going to solve everything. Julia's voice was shaking now, but not with fear, with pure, unbridled anger. I never claimed to have all the answers, but at least I'm trying. At least I'm putting my money where my mouth is. At least I'm doing something, instead of just sitting here criticizing everyone who actually gives a damn. The audience was in chaos. Some people were standing up. Others were shouting. A few were trying to leave, uncomfortable with the level of conflict they were witnessing. Security guards had moved closer to the stage, just in case things got physical. The producers were definitely screaming in someone's earpiece to cut to commercial, but nobody was listening. This was too good. This was the kind of television moment that would be replayed for years. Alyssa Farah Griffin finally spoke up, her voice barely audible over the chaos. Maybe we should all remember that we're on the same side here. We all want better education for... We're not on the same side, Joy interrupted, her eyes never leaving Julia's face. Julia is on Julia's side. That's how celebrities work. They find a cause. They attach their name to it. They get some good press, and then they move on to the next thing. I've seen it 1,000 times. How dare you? Julia's voice was barely above a whisper now, but somehow it cut through all the noise. How dare you reduce my commitment to some kind of publicity stunt? You don't know me. You don't know what drives me. You don't know what keeps me up at night. You don't know anything. I know plenty, Joy said, her arms crossed over her chest. I know that this foundation of yours has a fancy website and a lot of press releases, but I don't see a lot of actual results. Where's the proof? Where are the metrics? Where's the data showing that what you're doing is actually making a difference? You know what your problem is, Joy shot back, her voice just as loud. You can't handle criticism. You've been living in your Hollywood bubble for so long, surrounded by yes men and assistants and people who tell you how amazing you are every single day, that you've forgotten what it's like to be challenged. You've forgotten what it's like when someone doesn't buy into your carefully crafted image. Well, welcome to the real world, sweetheart. Not everyone is going to kiss your ass just because you're a movie star. The silence that followed that comment was deafening. The entire studio seemed to freeze. The audience stopped their chattering. The other hosts looked absolutely horrified. Even the camera operators seemed to pause for a second, like they couldn't believe what they had just heard. You could see Julia's chest rising and falling as she tried to control her breathing. Her hands were clenched into fists at her sides, her knuckles white from the pressure. Her jaw was set so tight it looked like her teeth might crack. For a long, terrible moment, everyone thought she might actually walk around the table and physically confront Joy. Sunny Hostin found her voice, though it was shaky. Joy, that was completely uncalled for. Was it? Joy whirled on Sunny. Was it uncalled for? She came in here acting like she's above questioning, like her celebrity status means we should just accept everything she says at face value. Well, I'm sorry, but that's not how this works. That's not how journalism works. Journalism? Julia laughed, and it was the most bitter, cutting laugh anyone had ever heard. You think this is journalism? You think ambushing someone on live television is journalism? This is a hit job, Joy. That's what this is. You had your mind made up about me before I even sat down. You probably had these questions written out, just waiting to attack me. I had legitimate questions, Joy insisted, but her voice wasn't as strong as it had been. If you can't handle legitimate questions, stop calling them legitimate. Julia's voice echoed through the studio. There's nothing legitimate about calling someone's life work a publicity stunt. There's nothing legitimate about mocking someone's charitable efforts. There's nothing legitimate about personal attacks disguised as journalism. Whoopi stood up, her voice firm and commanding. Okay, that's it. We need to take a break right now. We need everyone to calm down and... No, Julia said, and the single word carried so much weight that even Whoopi stopped talking. No, Whoopi. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I'm not going to calm down. I'm not going to pretend like this is okay. I'm not going to sit here and let Joy Behar disrespect me for one more second. Joy's face twisted into something ugly. Disrespect you? You've been disrespecting me since you opened your mouth. You've been disrespecting this show. You came here with your agenda, your talking points, your carefully rehearsed sound bites, and when someone dared to question you, you fell apart. You completely fell apart. I didn't fall apart, Julia said, her voice eerily calm now. I stood up for myself. There's a difference. And you know what? I'm glad this happened. I'm glad everyone is seeing the real you. The real Joy Behar. The woman who tears people down for sport. The woman who gets her kicks from making guests uncomfortable. The woman who hides behind the excuse of asking tough questions, when really, she's just being cruel. Get out, Joy said suddenly, her voice cutting through everything. Get the hell out of here. Oh, I'm going, Julia replied, but she didn't move yet. She stood there, holding Joy's gaze, refusing to be the first to look away. But before I do, let me say something to everyone watching at home, because they deserve to hear this. What you just witnessed here, this isn't real discourse. This isn't honest conversation. This isn't what interviewing someone should look like. This was a circus designed to humiliate people for entertainment. And Joy Behar, she's not a journalist. She's not even a talk show host. She's a bully, plain and simple. You're damn right I am, Joy fired back. And there was something almost proud in her voice. And if you can't handle it, if you can't handle someone who actually challenges you instead of blowing smoke up your ass, then get out of my kitchen. Your kitchen? Julia let out a laugh that was equal parts disbelief and fury. This isn't your kitchen, Joy. This is a show with multiple hosts. Look around you. Look at Whoopi. Look at Sunny. Look at Sarah. Look at Alyssa. Every single one of them has more grace, more dignity, more class than you could ever hope to have. They know how to ask tough questions without being vicious. They know how to challenge someone without being cruel. But you don't know the difference. Or maybe you do, and you just don't care. Joy moved like she was going to step toward Julia, her face contorted with rage. But Whoopi quickly moved between them, her hands up. Joy, don't. Just don't. Julia turned to look directly at Joy, and the look on her face was pure ice. It means I'm not going to sit here and let you disrespect me for one more second. You're a bully, Joy. That's what you are. You hide behind this show, behind this panel of women, and you attack people because it makes you feel important. But you're not important. You're just cruel. Joy's face went from red to purple. Get out, she said, her voice low and dangerous. Get the hell out of here. Oh, I'm going, Julia said, reaching for her microphone and yanking it off. The sound technicians probably had a heart attack when she did that. But before I do, let me say something to everyone watching at home. This, she gestured at the table, at Joy, at the whole setup. This is not real discourse. This is not honest conversation. This is a circus designed to humiliate people for entertainment. And Joy Behar is the ringleader. You're damn right I am, Joy fired back. And if you can't handle the heat, get out of my kitchen. Your kitchen? Julia let out a laugh that was part disbelief, part fury. This isn't your kitchen, Joy. This is a show with multiple hosts, and every single one of them. She looked at Whoopi, Sunny, Sarah, and Alyssa. Every single one of them has more grace and dignity than you could ever hope to have. Joy moved, like she was going to step toward Julia, but Whoopi put a hand on her arm. Joy, don't. No. Let her go, Joy said, shaking Whoopi's hand off. Let her run back to Hollywood, where everyone will tell her how brave she is for walking out. Let her play the victim. It's what celebrities do best. Julia grabbed her purse from beside the chair, her hands trembling with anger. You want to know something, Joy? I actually felt sorry for you when I walked in here today. I'd heard the stories about how difficult you could be, how you drove away guests, how you alienated people. But I thought, maybe people are exaggerating. Maybe she's not that bad. But wow, was I wrong? You're worse than anyone said. You're bitter and you're mean. And honestly, I pity anyone who has to work with you every day. The camera cut to the other hosts, and you could see the shock on their faces. This had gone way beyond a normal disagreement. This was personal warfare playing out on live television. Joy's voice was shaking now, either with rage or something else. It was hard to tell. You don't know anything about me. You come on here with your fake charity and your rehearsed talking points, and you think you can judge me? I've been doing this for decades, Julia. I've interviewed real newsmakers, real politicians, real people who've changed the world. You're just an actress. Just an actress, Julia repeated slowly, nodding. There it is. That's what this has been about the whole time. You don't think I'm worthy of being taken seriously. You don't think actors can care about real issues? Well, you know what, Joy? At least I'm trying to make a positive difference. What are you doing besides tearing people down every single day? She didn't wait for an answer. Julia turned on her heel, her head held high despite the tears that were clearly forming in her eyes. You could see her blinking them back, refusing to cry on camera. Her heels clicked loudly on the studio floor as she walked toward the exit. Every step was deliberate, controlled, like she was fighting to maintain her dignity. The audience didn't know what to do. Some people started clapping, unsure if they should support Julia's exit or stay silent. Others just sat there with their mouths open, stunned by what they had just witnessed. A few people were even filming on their phones, despite the studio rules against it. This was the kind of moment that would go viral within minutes. Joy called after her, unable to let it go. That's right. Run away when things get uncomfortable. That's what people like you do. Julia stopped dead in her tracks. Everyone in that studio held their breath. The camera operators adjusted their angles, making sure to capture whatever was about to happen next. For a second, just a brief second, it looked like Julia might turn around. Her shoulders tensed. Her hand tightened on her purse strap. But she didn't turn around. She didn't give Joy the satisfaction of another word, another look, another moment of her time. Instead, Julia Roberts, one of the biggest movie stars in the world, simply kept walking. She pushed through the studio doors with both hands, the heavy doors swinging open wide, and disappeared from view. The camera cut back to the panel, and the scene was absolute chaos. Joy was still standing, her chest heaving as she tried to catch her breath. Her face was still flushed, and you could see her hands shaking slightly as she gripped the edge of the table. She looked like she wanted to say something else, like she was searching for the perfect final word, but nothing came. Whoopi had both hands on her face, rubbing her temples like she had the world's worst headache. Sunny was staring at the spot where Julia had been sitting, her expression a mixture of shock and concern. Sarah had tears in her eyes, clearly upset by the confrontation she had just witnessed. Alyssa was looking down at the table, her jaw clenched tight. The studio audience was buzzing with conversation. People were talking to each other, pointing at the stage, their voices creating a low roar that filled the entire space. The producers were probably losing their minds in the control room, trying to figure out how to handle what had just happened. Joy finally sat back down, but her movements were jerky, uncoordinated. She straightened the papers in front of her with shaking hands, trying to regain some sense of composure. When she spoke, her voice wasn't as strong as it had been during the fight. It was shaky, uncertain, like maybe some part of her was starting to realize what had just gone down. Well, Joy said, attempting to sound casual but failing completely. I guess we know who can't handle a little honest conversation. But nobody at the table responded to her. Whoopi just shook her head slowly. Sunny looked away. Sarah wiped at her eyes. Alyssa stayed quiet, her expression unreadable. The silence from her co-hosts was deafening. And for the first time, Joy seemed to understand that maybe, just maybe, she had gone too far. The show's theme music started playing, signaling a commercial break, but the camera stayed on the panel for a few extra seconds. You could see Joy's face change as she looked at her co-hosts, as she saw their reactions, as the reality of what had just happened started to sink in. This wasn't just another heated debate that would be forgotten by tomorrow. This was something different, something bigger, something that would follow her. The last shot before cutting to commercial was of the empty chair where Julia had been sitting, her disconnected microphone still lying there like evidence of a crime scene. The energy in that studio was thick with tension, uncomfortable silence, and the unmistakable feeling that everyone had just witnessed something they would never forget. Julia Roberts had walked off the view, and nothing was ever going to be the same.